Ladies and gentlemen, Steve here. Welcome back to another episode of Detroit Lions football. Detroit Den 313. That's all we do is talk Detroit Lions football. Unfortunately, they got my guy Will working today, so I'm flying solo. I'm going to get with him later tonight. We'll have another episode out this evening for you guys. I'm still laid up from a surgery I had a couple weeks ago, so what I get to do is watch football all day. Wife's at work. I come hang out in the office. I look up some players, do some research, do a couple chores when I need to. You know, gotta keep the wife happy. But I'm going to do an episode today real quick. Hit that subscribe button. Helps me out a lot. Greatly appreciated. Never done anything like this before, where I'm going to give a reaction to a mock draft that I saw. If you know who Daniel Jeremiah is, he works for the NFL Network. He does some Chargers play-by-play on their radio station. Does a lot of mock drafts. Him and Field Yates are probably my two favorite mock draft guys. I'm not too high on Todd McShay, wherever he is now, or Mel Kiper Jr. Never been a huge fan, but I'm not here to bash people. When I see a mock draft come out from Field Yates or Daniel Jeremiah, I immediately get on, I look at it, and what he did yesterday kind of surprised me. Surprised a lot of people from what I saw on Twitter. Some people reacting, not negatively, but you could just tell, like, the Zach Frazier from West Virginia, not exactly a household name. I had heard it before, but that's who Daniel Jeremiah had the Detroit Lions taking at pick 29. And I saw that and I was like, oh, that's kind of a early pick. I hadn't seen him in the first round. I think that's what kind of surprised a lot of people. But I said to myself, Steve, before you form an opinion, what you got to do is do your homework. You got to go look into this kid. You got to go see what he sees and see if you see the same thing. I will tell you right now, if you love physical, violent type of football players, Zach Frazier's your guy. And I keep wanting to call him Zach Wilson just because of the Zach. I don't know what it is. So if I say Zach Wilson, I apologize. It's Zach Frazier. Interior offensive lineman from West Virginia, 6'3", 310 pounds. I say interior offensive lineman. I know he's a center at West Virginia. But if the Detroit Lions draft him, excuse me, just dying over here. If the Detroit Lions draft him, he's going to be playing guard. He's not going to overtake Frank Ragnow while he's still deciding to play. Frank still got a little bit left. Frank still has something left in the tank. So while Frank's our center, if we were to draft Zach Frazier, he's going to play guard, probably left guard. I think we'll have Glasgow at the right guard, Jonah Jackson. In my opinion, nothing official yet. I just see him moving on to a different team, free agency. So I can see Zach Frazier being the left guard of the future. Now, like I said, if you like absolute physical interior offensive lineman, Zach Frazier is probably the most physical offensive lineman I've watched so far. I've watched Jackson Powers Johnson. He's a dog in his own right. But if these two guys, Zach Frazier versus Jackson Powers Johnson, went head to head, Zach Frazier is going to win 99 times out of 100. I believe. Why? 4-time state champion in heavyweight wrestling in high school as a heavyweight. Why I like to have wrestlers on the interior offensive line. They know leverage. They know body control, their footwork, their positioning. They move another human being against their will. That is exactly what you have to do in wrestling and how you can translate that into football. If you have a child out there, if you have a young kid who loves playing offensive line, I would say try to convince them to get into wrestling. Don't force your kids to do anything they don't want to do. But I would try to steer them in that direction and just see how it works out. Just a little parenting advice. I'm not a parent myself, but offensive linemen who are wrestlers, I think they have more success in both sports. I'm just saying, you know, give that gentle little shove, see how it works out. That's my one advice for the day. Physically being able to dominate someone in college football at an elite level is hard to do. And what I've watched Zach do while playing mainly against Texas, I was watching the Texas film. What I like to do is I look at a lineman, I look at a team he plays for, and I say, who was his biggest competition this season? I do it all the time. This year, for me, in my opinion, it was probably Texas. Why? Why Texas? A lot of people in this forum, in this Detroit Lions world, are very high on Texas's defensive tackle / nose tackle, Tavondre Sweat, who Zach Frazier went up against often, being a nose tackle, defensive tackle. And Zach Frazier absolutely, I have to use the word dominated. He dominated Tavondre Sweat. Took him almost immediately out of the game plan. Just It's a lot of people who have Devondre Sweat as a top 50 prospect. Zach Frazier put him in his back pocket for pretty much the whole game. He got a couple pressures. It's football. It happens. But 9 times out of 10, 9.8 times out of 10, Zach Frazier won his matchup against Devondre Sweat or whoever else he was going against. What I love about Zach Frazier, his wrestling background, I already talked about that. Versatility. I think if you, in today's world, in the NFL and college football, if you play center or guard, you have to be able to play both positions. We saw it with Graham Glasgow. We've seen it before in the past. So when I look at Zach, I see a guy who can play center. He's going to be the center of this team going forward. When Frank decides he's had enough, when the injuries get to be too much and Frank says, I'm done, I have to hang him up, it's going to be a sad day. But we are also drafting a position in Zach Frazier of a guy who's going to be your center of the future going forward. And he's versatile enough to right now where he can be a plug and play. While he's not playing center, he's going to play that left guard position. Versatility is key on the interior offensive line. Tackles are usually just tackles. I know you can switch them from left to right. Footwork, hand movement, placement, all that's different. But in the interior offensive line, you're talking about pulling, gapping down to linebackers. It's a whole nother world. They each have their responsibilities. I love talking trenches, but it's going to be – this is a very nice pick because of the versatility. But I'm going to get into some other stuff a little bit later. So when you watch the film, and I'm going to tag Zach Frazier's highlights at the end of this video. I'll put it down in the description so you guys can go down there and see it for yourself what I'm talking about. I've watched all his highlight tapes. I watched the Texas game where West Virginia was only on offense because I'm watching Zach Frazier. I don't care about when they're on defense. I only watch when West Virginia had the ball. At the point of attack, when he's engaging a defender, you can see it looks like he's in a wrestling match. You can tell that he's being violent with this other human being, physically dominating his matchup. This kid's known for hip tosses. He's hip tossing there's a different hip toss in every highlight video I watch. You're going to love it. If you remember when Rodrigo did it to Jason Kelsey a couple years ago against the Eagles, he completely flung him 3 yards down the field. That's what Zach Frazier is doing to defensive linemen. He is taking them, hip tossing them, pushing them back, or putting them on the ground in the NFL, within the NFL rules, so that it's not a hold. It almost looks like the defender is trying to wrestle a bear. I've never wrestled a bear. I've never seen anyone wrestle a bear, but that's just the image I got in my head while I'm watching this kid. I absolutely loved it. Question mark. Obviously, there's no such thing as a perfect draft prospect. Like, no matter who you want to look at, if you want to look at Peyton Manning, Tom Brady, all the pros versus the cons, being too slow, athleticism, nobody is going to be perfect in the NFL. Nobody's going to be perfect in life. You're damn near not going to be perfect in the NFL. This is just a question. This is a question for you guys. Zach Frazier is mostly being ranked between, let's call it 50 and 60 on player rankings. Is that too high to take a player at 29? Now, I understand Brad Holmes' mentality. He does not give a shit about mock drafts. How he ranks players versus other teams is completely different, and it's worked. He's hit home runs every single draft that he's been a part of so far. I see that continuing. Is Zach Frazier someone who's on his board? I think he is. I think he's probably the number 2 center behind Jackson Powers Johnson. So at pick 29, with the Lions needing an interior offensive lineman, a defensive end, and a cornerback as it sits today, with no free agency, nothing really crazy going on with franchise tags yet. That window is open, but nothing's happened yet, so we don't know. Free agency is not even, what are we, 3 weeks away? So as the team sits today, is Zach Frazier someone who should be on Brad Holmes' board? In my opinion, yes. Where he has him ranked, no idea. Where I would put Zach Frazier, offensive line-wise, interior, I would say he's number 2. I would say he's behind Jackson Powers Johnson, end of list. I mean, I'm not going to compare him to the tackles. I'm just talking interior of the offensive line. So being ranked between 50 and 60, taking him at 29. So why do I bring this up is because between 50 and 60 doesn't do us any good in the second round. We have picked 61. So that means technically he's going to go at the worst 1 pick in front of us. And I know that there's a lot of things that can happen in the NFL draft, trades, how people value other people. 60 is just a ranking, but I'm just bringing it up for content. I'm just asking you guys. Is he worth a first-round pick with a player ranking out like that? When I watch him on tape, yes, I see this kid playing football for a long period of time. I see him being in the NFL longer than usual. I don't know what the life expectancy is in the NFL. What is it, like 3 or 4 years, something like that, maybe 5. I can see this kid having a 12-year career with how he manipulates people and what he does really well. So is that worth a first-round pick to have your center / guard come in day one and be a starter? That's how you got to look at it. I think this kid's going to have a nice career. It's really going to come down to Brad Holmes. This is his decision to make, not mine. I'm just giving my opinion. I like this kid. Number 2 interior offensive lineman, in my opinion. If you haven't looked up this kid, if you've seen the Daniel Jeremiah mock draft and you saw the name and said, who? I kind of did the same thing. Again, a name I was familiar with. Do a little bit of homework. I'm going to help you guys out. I've given you my opinion. I'll lead you to the watering well. I can only lead you there. I can't make you drink, but I will put his highlights in the description. All you got to do is click that after you hit the subscribe button. You can go watch what he does to defensive linemen and form your own opinion. I'm saying I won't be mad if this is the pick at 29, but I keep hammering this. It depends for me on free agency. Free agency starts, I think, March 13th. So we're a couple weeks away from that, 2.5 weeks. What the Detroit Lions do in free agency is going to dictate what I want to happen in the draft. And I think a lot of, if you guys watch a lot of other YouTube podcasts, I know a lot of people say the same thing. Free agency needs to happen first. It's very important. What we address there will dictate what happens in the NFL draft. Right now we have some luxuries. If we share up some stuff from free agency, get a starting cornerback 2, maybe a cornerback 1, depending on who's available. Jalen Johnson, fingers crossed. If we go out and get one of those top edge rushers, that shares up a position that we don't have to worry about in the draft right away, maybe later down the road. We'll have to see what type of luxuries we're looking at once we get there after free agency. So guys, Zach Frazier, interior offensive lineman in West Virginia, 6'3", 310 pounds, absolute unit. Check him out. Hit that like button. Leave a comment down below. Let me know how you felt about this video. If you're new to this channel, hit that subscribe button, guys. Again, greatly appreciated. And me and Will be back together tonight with another episode for you guys. Have a good